Okay, well, yes, I'm Carla Carter, and Ron is going to be manning the chat. So please make sure that if you have any questions, that you address them to Ron in the chat. I think we're all familiar with Star Wars. If you're not, please become familiar with Star Wars. As a technology person, it's incredibly important. But we all probably remember Obi-Wan waving his hands and saying, "These are not the droids you're looking for," and then the stormtroopers let them go by so that they can proceed to get off of Tatooine. And then this is the funny one, those were the droids I was looking for. So Obi-Wan actually, with his Jedi mind tricks, was engaging in a form of social engineering. What your students probably, and you yourself, will encounter are all sorts of attempts by bad actors to manipulate them through other types of social engineering. Now, this one is absolutely ridiculous. You've probably seen all the quizzes online where it's like, what's your street name and your birthday and the first pet you had, that's your stripper name or whatever. So this one makes fun of that. What's your stormtrooper name, your first and last initials, your credit card number, and the last three numbers on the back, and the expiration date. Clearly you wouldn't want to give out this sort of information. So it's mocking that. But our students are going to be exposed to all sorts of memes like this. So they'll be able to appreciate if you can tie things back to this. We have a whole class that is solely on human factors. So we call it the social engineering class, but it's technically human factors because we talk about more than just social engineering. But in the class, we want to teach people how to social engineer as is a means of making sure that they're prevented from being social engineered. And also, we want to teach them how to do security awareness at their own organization. So working on people skills is just a huge part of being successful in cybersecurity. And remember, have you checked the chat window? Ron's going to be manning that. I'm going to be doing the slides and talking. So Ron, you're going to have to let me know if there's a question where someone wants me to stop and answer a question.
Certainly, Carl.
All right. Our course, Cyber 520, so this is a graduate course. We have an MS Cyber program, and it's called the Human Aspects of Cybersecurity. I'm going to go through these kind of quickly. All of this information is in the slides, which should be made available, or as Ron said, you can contact us. So one of the main books we use is by Chris Hadnagy, The Social Engineering, the Science of Hacking. This is the second edition. We also use Transformational Security Awareness by Perry Carpenter. This book is part of the cybersecurity canon. And we use Influence by Robert Cialdini. This is a classic from the 1980s, and it's not only used by marketers, but social engineering is marketing, right? And it is pictured here with a Thanksgiving treat, cranberry sauce with can marks as nature intended. I'll pretend there's lots of laughter. Another of the resources we use in class are podcasts, and Darknet Diaries is a perennial favorite, but another one that is very specifically related to social engineering is Hacking Humans. There's also Hacker Valley Studio, and every now and then you might find another podcast that you wouldn't think was cybersecurity that is related to, has an episode on it. So for instance, Tim Hartford has Cautionary Tales podcast, which I highly recommend anyway. But he has this wonderful one, actually episode 2, The Rogue Dressed as a Captain, where he completely describes a con that occurred in pre-World War I Germany. We encourage the students to do clickbait subject lines. So you've probably seen these online. When these lions found an injured fox, you won't believe what happened next. And I have to tell you that not only for the purposes of teaching this in class, but I needed to know what happened to that fox. And the fox survived. The female lion, the lioness, got really angry with the lion when he tried to kill the fox. So she protected the fox, and the fox trotted away at the end of it. That took me like 50 times to click through to find out what happened to the fox. And there's actually a subreddit you can go to that will tell you what happened next. So you don't have to do that. Someone else clicks through it for you. But I want to teach the students how to recognize these sorts of dangerous clickbait subject lines. So we have, as an optional, we don't require them to, but when they're doing their discussion board posts for an online class, we want them to master being able to have clickbait subject lines. And the students have just a ton of fun with it as well. The assignment instructions are in the slide notes. Because it is well, we have it as a face-to-face version, but right now, because of the pandemic, we're holding a lot of classes online. We have different discussion prompts, and the discussion boards aren't, they're more like seminar discussions. So somebody would have a presentation that they're giving to the other students. It's not always just a quick back and forth. They have to write about a page of their discussion prompt, and then the other students come in and play devil's advocate and try and poke holes in the argument and say, well, have you thought of it this way? So there's a lot of interesting back and forth that happens with these sorts of things. One of the questions we ask involves students actually going out and doing reconnaissance. So they have to, I call it a harmless internet surveillance exercise. You find someone on the internet, and then you Google stalk them, essentially, or Bing stalk them, whichever one you want to do. And it helps them understand just how much is out there. And I'm always surprised how many students don't realize how much information is out there. So it's a really helpful exercise. It's an option, one of 4 options, but the students who are participating, responding back to the other students who do Google stalk somebody, really get to see what sort of dangerous things are out there. And we do ask the students to not say who it is they're Google stalking. You know, we want them to redact the information to keep everyone safe. I had a student Google stalk me once, which was really fascinating. Another of our discussion prompts that teaches students the importance of reconnaissance, but in this case, more with a goal of having to actually use the reconnaissance to build rapport with someone, is to go to your parking lot, and some of these exercises were developed pre-pandemic. So we have the instruction now that, make sure that you're, exercising social distancing and keeping everyone safe. But just look at some of these cars, look at the stickers that are on the cars, and try to think like an attacker meaning somebody who's trying to build rapport so that they can gain an advantage and get information from you, or build a relationship in order to escalate their privileges to your boss. And so looking at a car like this, it's really pretty obvious how you would build rapport with this person. All you have to do is bone up on Harry Potter and you're in, they would be a complete sitting duck. Now, I'm not saying that you can't express your personality with your car. If you want to do that sort of thing, then probably just make sure that you're completely suspicious of everyone who tries to build up a conversation with you. Another of our discussion prompts is that we want students to think of how they would do an attack plan to get to a person. So we encourage them to, in this case, come up with a fictional company. So we want a fictional, they can come up with one on their own without using existing fiction, certainly, but sometimes it's easier to look at it and go, okay, how am I going to infiltrate Wayne Enterprises? Or how am I going to compromise the security systems at Jurassic Park? And in this, when I'm doing these sorts of discussion questions where I'm giving students for instances, because sometimes that terrible abyss of freedom can, be like, oh my gosh, there's like all of these companies, which one do I pick? And so I try to give some examples, but when I'm doing this, I'm also trying to be really representative and give a wide range of characters. And I'm not perfect at this, I'm still working on it, but I think that's important to remember, that when we're giving examples, that everyone needs to be able to see themselves in an assignment, at least one assignment in the class, even if it's not that everyone can see themselves in every different assignment. So in this particular case, we want people to work on developing pretexts so that they can gain an advantage, get some sort of information, get into someone's office, whatever it is that they need to do. Oh, my cats are here. In the, oh, kitty, come here, hold on. Sorry about that. There, you have a kitty. This is Charlie Brown. The the book that we use, the Carpenter book on security awareness, Carpenter advises us that we want to think like a marketer and a storyteller. So in this plays into the Cialdini book as well, because when we're talking about creating influence with people, that's just all in the realm of marketing. And really, if you think about it, social engineering is just marketing something to someone to gain some sort of advantage. The skills are just very, very similar. And storytelling is huge, because storytelling is not only how you could develop an elaborate pretext that's actually going to work well to achieve your end goals, but it's also how you convince people who have money and power that they need to give you resources to do things like security awareness programs. And so I wanted students to focus on marketing. So let's look at some of the ads that are out there. And the clip I have here is from an ad that I have to be careful when I tell the story, because it's incredibly touching. It's the Sainsbury, a British company. And they have a story about the World War I Christmas truce, which is actually based on a true story. And I want students to watch these ads and explain exactly how they're being manipulated. And yes, that takes some of the magic out of the ads when you look at it. But this is probably one of the best assignments, because you get to see all sorts of ads you wouldn't see otherwise, and then see people explaining them. So if we understand how we're being manipulated, then we can understand how to combat that, or possibly manipulate others as well. Another of our assignments is a phishing campaign, where, here's a kitty again, where we're actually teaching students or encouraging them to set up their own phishing campaigns. Here, kitty, get down. And they then, they're given instructions that this is not for real. They're not actually going to phish anybody. And we emphasize that this is, it would be completely unethical. It would be awful. You can't phish people. And the sort of artifacts they come up with are just amazing. I mean, the creativity, I tell them, put a white cat on your lap. If you're not a James Bond fan, that might not make sense, but it's been a hugely successful thing. And then our big project for this class is that they have to do a security awareness training campaign. So they've taken everything that they've learned and based very strongly on the Carpenter book as well. They have to create a project plan, and then there's a presentation that's actually going to be given as part of the training. And as another part of it, they have to do a survey. And what's interesting is a lot of people want to do quizzes of the employees, and we're emphasizing no surveys. There are no wrong answers. You're trying to find out at the beginning, what do people know about security awareness? And then you want to find out at the end, okay, how did they change? All right. 2020 wouldn't be 2020 without a meme. So, and we do have Thanksgiving to look forward to next week. All right, any questions?
The only one that came up in chat, Carla, was just about Darknet Diaries, the one episode you mentioned, but thank you to Bradley for answering that.
Oh, cool, okay.
But I do have a story teaching this class, because we have students all over the world. One of the exercises is to see if you can social engineer someone's phone. This is when we actually used to see people face to face. Find a stranger to see how hard or easy it would be to ask to borrow their phone. For example, it's like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to call my daughter and my battery just died. Can I just borrow your phone for a minute and use it just to call my daughter? Well, what we'd have the students do, would call either Professor Carter or myself in our office and just leave a message. Students then realized how simple it was to social engineer common items like a cell phone that contains all of the information from our lives. We've had a lot of success with this as an exercise to actually practice influence skills. Carla, since we have an extra minute, are there other memorable assignments or stories that you have in teaching this class?
One of the interesting ones, so at the very beginning of the class, we have a video that was created by our people who know how to do, interactive videos thing, where they have to observe everything that's going on and then take a memory quiz on of that. We have a student who is visually impaired, so he was unable to watch. We've since come up with an alternative for that. So that's kind of a accessibility story as well. But he couldn't do the assignment because it was all based on watching and looking at stuff. So what we did was we came up with an alternate assignment to have him eavesdrop at a coffee shop. And that was just fascinating for everyone to experience. Okay, even if you have a visual disability, there are all sorts of other ways you could still be a social engineer if you wanted to. So he picked up some really, really interesting gossip at the coffee shop and reported that back to the class. So it ended up being a really cool learning experience for everyone. Plus, we made sure that our assignments were fully accessible.
Gretchen brings up a good point in chat about this expands beyond the technical. So often we are so focused on just how to do the penetration testing. If you talk to any of the luminaries of cybersecurity, like the Marcus Ranum, Bruce Schneier's, they all come and have the same epiphany, that it's all about the humans. We can lock down our computer systems quite well, but it's just one silly human who opens up a door, has an open Wi-Fi connection, forgets to reset the admin password. Boom, you're in. Talk to pen testers. Social engineering is often the first avenue in. So that's why we have this as a class. We thought it was very important to connect with the students. In the chat, I put some of the references that we use, the OSINT framework, the Chris Hadnagy book, Social Engineering, the Science of Human Hacking, Perry Carpenter book on transformational security awareness. I'll put in the chat, if you're looking for good cybersecurity books, it's known as the Cybersecurity Canon, now run out of Ohio State University, formerly from Palo Alto Networks. It's the Cybersecurity Book Hall of Fame. We're actually meeting next month to decide the 2020 winners. So please connect with Carla and myself. We love to share ideas with others, and that's why we love giving these talks. Carla, any other parting thoughts? Oh, it looks like we do have a question in chat too.
Oh, okay. We often, we hear, humans are the weakest link, and that's definitely true. Hacking the human is always going to be is much easier than trying to brute force a password. But humans are also the greatest strength. And so don't ever get into the humans are bad and humans are going to cause the downfall of everything. Because in one of the later Darknet Diaries episodes, he does a whole series on North Korea. He points out that it was actually the vigilance of a human that kept this multi-million-dollar breach from happening. So if you do enlist humans in helping in your security awareness programs, then they are also your greatest asset. So it's just a total double-edged sword. Humans are the ones who can screw up, but humans are also the ones who can save us.
So Carla, there's a couple of questions in chat. First from Harry, have you guys considered allowing the students to phish and social engineer the professor? Yes, it happens all the time. And then the other question is about ethics. And Professor Carter also teaches ethics. So maybe if you want to talk about allowing the students to phish and social engineer us as the instructors, and then on how we tie in ethics with this.
So it's always fascinated me that, I don't have I try to kind of keep my digital footprint under pseudonyms, but anyone with any reasonable OSINT skills could probably figure out, if only by looking at my private Twitter description, how you would try and build rapport with me or try to, get me on your good side or whatever. And it's just fascinating that the students don't do that. I keep waiting for it, but it doesn't happen. But I mean, they would certainly be welcome to try. I'm always worried whenever I see a link in class. So it's important to, when you see links, to always go and check out whether that's really the correct link or not, even though it would be really fun to get rickrolled or something. But I do discuss the big 5 personality framework in class, and I let them know that I have literally a 0 agreeableness score. So I'm probably not the sort of person who, I'm not saying I couldn't be phished. Come on, it can happen to anybody, but I think they go for lower hanging fruit in that particular case. But it would be interesting to ask that question of some of the other folks we have teaching this class. As far as ethics, so when I teach ethics, it's a general information technology ethics class, but we do have security units. And of course, we do talk about social engineering. This is a topic that comes up pretty much in any of the technology classes we have. There's always a mention of social engineering. There's always a mention of ethics.
So let's look at what Deborah has to say. They plan social engineering attacks. How many others actually have social engineering either as individual assignments or as a specific class with this, because it can get very dangerous. And this is where we want to contain what our students do, and give them specific targets. One of the things we've done is we've created, Professor Carter calls them sock puppet accounts. So I love that term, fake accounts. The one we use is actually Jonathan Tuttle. So are there any other MASH fans? You may remember, well, if you begin to do ascent on Jonathan Tuttle from the old TV show MASH, you will see a connection now forever to Bellevue University, because we used him as our sock puppet account for students to be able to research. We created Facebook, Twitter, don't tell them, but just so students can conduct research in a safe manner, because as Carla mentioned earlier, they will look at family and friends, and occasionally they find things. A couple of other points with this class. First of all, social engineering is the flip side of leadership. Why I also really teach this class is because we have a gap in security leadership. How to talk to CISOs from around the world, and what are the two biggest problems they have? There's actually a story in the Economist on this from 2017. Two biggest problems. One is how to prioritize risks. Two is how do I influence risk decisions? Well, this human hacking class is all about influence, whether you're looking at the positive side or the negative side with manipulation. So it's teaching students how to positively influence and persuade their constituents within the companies, but then also understanding how it can be used maliciously by social engineers. From everything from OSINT. So I put the OSINT framework, didn't talk about it, but it's a great single website you can go to with most tools to look up people's names, email addresses, finding information about companies. They tie into a tool like Shodan. And if you haven't seen Shodan, it's just information on Google Dorks. I was mentioned in the session earlier today about the importance of Google hacking. We actually include that with this. Can you, just by conducting normal internet research, Carla provided the automobile earlier, but with our digital footprints, what information do we leak? And students love this class because it wakes them up as to how much information they leak. But true story, I actually had a student be able to take the same techniques to sell his house. He was selling his house without a broker, without a realtor. And someone called up saying, hey, I want to look at your house. So he looked this person up on social media, saw what type of beer this person liked, and made sure it was out. And coincidentally, hey, this happens to be my favorite beer too. And the person bought the house, long story short. So lots of opportunities for students to take these same tools, whether you're using them maliciously or productively, as part of a cybersecurity career.
So I've, can you see the screen I'm sharing now? This is in our Blackboard environment, the phishing campaign project. And I don't know how big the text is showing up on there, but this is, and we have, I hate to have assignments where the explanatory verbiage is longer than the deliverable we expect from them. So some of our assignments are more like in the terrible abyss of freedom area, but this is the phishing campaign project. So they're introduced to it we have biweekly units. So they're introduced to it in weeks 5 and 6, and it's not due until, we have 12-week terms. It's not due until the end of week 9. And so you can see this is what we're asking them to do. But we do mention, this is a simulation. You're not to actually conduct a phishing exercise. That would be illegal and unethical. And it's, probably mentioned a few other times in class as well that, these are not good things to do to companies, to try to hurt companies. The scariest thing you can have when you're teaching any sort of penetration testing, whether that's social engineering penetration testing or technical, is that yes, you've just learned this really interesting hacking technique, and no, you can't go use this in the wild. There has to be signed papers and agreements, and that I would say all of our classes have some sort of ethical preamble that go along with that. The ethics class is an elective for the program for both undergraduate and graduate. And a lot of students do choose to take it. It just really depends on, what their focus is, because they have a limited amount of time and money.
We will have some students who use this exercise, though, within their community. For example, they realize that their church could be susceptible to phishing, the church staff. So they actually asked, hey, do you mind if I use this in real life? And yes, we love that. Make sure you have permission. And that's why we require the project plan, because so often a student will just want to throw a link out there and try to just see who connects with it. Well, if you study what Chris Hadnagy has done at DEF CON and the social engineering capture the flag that he has conducted over the last 10 years, it needs to be very methodical and very well thought out. Please, if you haven't checked out Chris Hadnagy's book, his website is social-engineer.org, where it's a great resource for these classes, and it makes it real life. That's where students really dig this, because it's not just about academia anymore. This is what we do as a cybersecurity profession. So if there are other questions, please put them in chat. Otherwise, we look forward to just chatting more with you all. Please connect with Carla and myself. Anything else? Last parting thoughts, Carla?
No, I think we got it covered.
Thank you very much, Ron and Carla. And I like what was said about students waking up, in the atmosphere of this type of. This is the great side of, the education in cyber to me. This is the fun part, right? We even have a project here locally where the students explore the social engineering concept, and I haven't read that book that you just brought up, Ron, but I know Kevin Mitnick spoke about his early days in social engineering and how he got started, and it's just an amazing concept. It's pretty exciting, and yeah, it's just the fun side of cyber with us, and it should be talked about more, right? And it should be in the curriculum on our side. Deborah brought up a class that she's doing, but yeah, we should see more of that. Thank you very much, Carla and Ron from Bellevue University. Great presentation on social engineering.